right, guys. The story of the hour, besides Colin Cowherd saying weird things about JJ McCarthy's practices in Minnesota sports, has been the rumored flirtations between or for the Wolves and Kevin Durant. We know that was a big thing heading into the trade deadline. Well, now that the season's over for the Wolves, NBA Finals is still going on. The Kevin Durant sweepstakes are in full gear at this point, with new reports coming in. It feels like every hour, and we've written plenty of it over on Minnesota Timberwolves on SI. So go check that out there. But I want to get your guys' thoughts on this. And Tony, I'll start with you here. Let's just start off with the basic gist of this. Is trading for Kevin Durant the right move for the Timberwolves this offseason?
Uh yeah, I think it is. Especially I think it all comes down to the deal, what they're giving up, who they're giving up. I think if they can keep together Ant and Jaden McDaniels, I think you just do it. My opinion, those are really the only two guys that I think you have to keep at this point. And especially when you're acquiring someone like Durant, who is definitely on the back end of his career, I think you want to keep those two young building blocks that you have and that are proven to be great players in the NBA. And like Rob Dillingham's an interesting piece because we still don't really know what he is. And if he's in a deal, I think he kind of has to be to tempt the Suns to maybe want to do a deal with the Wolves. But if you're able to keep McDaniels and Edwards, I think you just do it. I think it gives you a short, maybe 1 or 2 year window to use Durant while he's still one of the best scorers in the league. But I think it would present a lot of unique matchup problems. They'd immediately become one of the best offensive teams in the NBA. And there's just so much that goes into it because if they do get off Gobert, then you need another center, and then your defense kind of becomes a little pedestrian. So I think it would open a lot of doors, but Tim Connolly has shown time after time that he's aggressive and he's willing to make these big swings. And I don't think there's always an opportunity for to make a trade for someone like Durant in a first ballot Hall of Famer. One of the best offensive players ever aren't on the market all the time. So I think you do it and then figure out the problems later.
Well, is it the right move for the Wolves this offseason?
Yeah, I saw somebody tweet this, and I'm kind of adopting it as my stance as a Wolves fan. Is like, if the Wolves trade for Kevin Durant, that's awesome. We got KD on our team, one of the greatest scorers ever. Still, I mean, he turns 37 soon, but he still has not really shown any signs of dropping off all that much. It would be an unbelievably fun fit next to Anthony Edwards, who grew up watching him. He was his favorite player. They played together at the Olympics last year. I think it'd be really fun. If they don't do it, then we can spin it and say, "Oh, we dodged a bullet. We didn't give. Can't believe we were about to give up so many assets for 37-year-old Kevin Durant. Like, what are the Spurs or the Heat or whoever gets him doing?" So that's kind of how I'll do it. But I agree with Tony. I think it just comes down to the price. I think Jaden McDaniels is untouchable. They're not going to give up a guy with as much potential as he has, what he's already shown. Second team all defensive guy last year. He averaged almost 15 points per game in these playoffs. Just the ceiling, he still doesn't even come close to reaching his ceiling, I don't think. So you're not getting rid of Anthony Edwards' long-term running mate there. After that, I agree that anybody could really be on the table. With that said, I don't think it's just we'll give you whoever you want outside of Anthony Edwards and Jaden McDaniels. I think like the hope is that his price has come down a little bit since the trade deadline. The Suns kind of feels like they have to trade him. Now, maybe there are other teams that can give better offers than the Wolves, but the one that's been floated a lot is like Rudy Gobert, Dante DiVincenzo, and Rob Dillingham. And I think I would do that. I do. I mean, Dante's on a great contract. I think Rob has a chance to be a good player, but we just don't know. And so if you're able to do that, you're keeping Terrence Shannon Jr. and Jalen Clark. You're keeping the 17th and 31st picks in this draft in theory. You're keeping Julius Randle and Naz Reid, I suppose, depending on their player option situations. I don't know. There's so much we could talk about with this, and I'm sure we will, but I would be open to trading Rudy Gobert in this deal. especially if it means that that's appealing to the Suns, who were really bad defensively last year and kind of need a center. The playoffs, man. He's Rudy Gobert is such a defensive floor raiser, but he's hard to watch on offense when he struggles to catch the ball. He's so limited on that end of the floor. Even rebounding, his rebounding numbers dropped, and it seems like he goes up and he gets a hand on the ball every time, and he really struggles to pull down contested boards. I don't know if the ceiling of the Wolves with Rudy Gobert as a featured part of the team is getting over the hump. I think trading for him was absolutely the right idea. They raised their floor. They got Anthony Edwards, a ton of playoff experience these last couple of years. But I'm ready to include Rudy Gobert in a Suns deal, even if that means that obviously you need to then pivot and find another center or two this offseason so that your defense isn't atrocious.
That kind of leads into my next question. You already talked about the price tag for Durant, Will, and the offer and the proposed trade that's been out there that's been kind of bandied about by the around league circles. Rudy Gobert, Dante DiVincenzo, Rob Dillingham. Will, you already said that you're okay trading Rudy Gobert. Tony, when you see that price tag, Gobert, Dante, and Rob, is that too high, or is you think that's fine for a guy of Durant's age and how short of a time span you'll have him for?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting because I think there's about just as many positives as there is negatives because uh, the Wolves for the last since they've gotten Gobert, Wolves fans, I guess, are fully aware of kind of the defense that we've had to make for the two big lineup and say, oh, this is gonna work. It did work against the Nuggets, and then they trade Cat, and then it's just Gobert, and then it's almost like as a Wolves fan, you have to defend Gobert because he gets so much hate everywhere else, and then you kind of talk yourself into him, and then if they trade him, it kind of goes completely away from the identity that they've had the last few years of leaning on that huge anchor, Hall of Fame defensive player in the middle, and then I think they kind of have a huge gap there. Then, like Nas Reed can play the five at times, but he's such a fall off defensively from what Gobert is. At least I personally think there are things that he can do better than Gobert. He can guard the perimeter better than him, and it gives them more versatility. But when you run into a team like the Nuggets with Jokic, I just don't know how they'd be able to defend that because I think Jokic would have like a 40-point triple double every night. Um, and there'd be they'd have a gap, a huge hole, I think, for a defensive anchor at the five, and they might not need it year one because maybe they don't get a veteran guy there. Maybe they go and get someone in the draft, but I think that just becomes a huge red flag from a roster building perspective that I'm sure Tim Connolly would be fully aware of and make a move. But it's just I feel like if they make the deal, getting rid of Gobert for Durant, then there's just a lot more dominoes that would need to fall after that in order to build a championship contender, in my opinion.
Right. I don't even know what the salary cap would look like after that kind of a trade, how much space you would have to use to operate and find defensive pieces. But Will, if you get rid of Gobert, as we've talked about, that takes away a lot of your defense. How would the Wolves go about fixing that with presumably not a whole lot of cap space and a cap flexibility to operate? How do you fix that kind of a defensive hole with so little to work with?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people say this, like, oh, if we get rid of Rudy Gobert, we're going to give up 150 points a
Right.
game, and the
It's not true.
defense is going to be horrible. And that just feels to me like, I don't know, fear of change, fear of the unknown. Oh, let's stay with this high floor defense, and I think that's a little risk averse. I think we might be at the time where we got to take a little bit of a swing on things, and if that means moving on from Rudy Gobert and taking a step back defensively for the chance of becoming a ridiculously good offense, and trying something else to potentially get over the hump. I think it might be worth it having Kevin Durant on the team. And yes, you would have to go get. I think in an ideal world, if Rudy Gobert's not on the team, you sign a veteran center and you draft a big man at either 17 or 31. You can play Nas at the five and go with an all offense lineup. The rim protection is not going to be great there. But yeah, I think you'd have to go sign like a Steven Adams or a Brook Lopez or somebody, or I don't know if they could acquire Nick Claxton from the Nets or something like that. But you'd have to get a five, and they don't have a ton of space, but we'll see what happens with player options, trades. They have the mid-level exception they can use. So it's like 14 million. Um, and then you can draft a guy at 17 too, or 31, and bring in another young big. So I don't think it's just you're guaranteeing yourself to be a bottom 10 offense if you get rid of Rudy Gobert. This is still a team that has Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels, some other good defenders, depending on who's around. Nickeil Alexander-Walker might be leaving as well. But, I mean, Tony mentioned Jokic. They gave up a 61-point triple-double to Jokic with Rudy Gobert playing 40 minutes.
That's
So
true.
sometimes that just happens. But, yeah, it'll be really interesting to me because if you're keeping Jaden McDaniels, which we're assuming that they are, you have to either be sending out Rudy or Julius Randle basically to make the money work. And then additional pieces as well to get to the 53, 54 million that Durant's making on his contract next year. I think if you get rid of Randle, it's a cleaner fit where you just slide KD into the 4 or maybe put him at the 3, put Jaden at the 4, and you keep your 5. If you're getting rid of Rudy, then yeah, it becomes a little bit like who's playing the 5. But with that said, I think Randall maybe has more value potentially to the Wolves, potentially to other teams.
It's also going to be more expensive.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah, Rudy is already all the contract stuff's interesting because Rudy's already about to go into a 3-year extension that he agreed to last offseason. Randall's got the player option, so he kind of needs a new deal to make this work. So there's just a lot of moving pieces, but I think my kind of bottom line answer is I would be excited about Kevin Durant being in a Timberwolves uniform as long as they don't. I wouldn't want to do a deal if the Suns were like, hey, give us Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo and Rob Dillingham and the 17th pick, and like there comes a point where you don't want to give up too much for a 37-year-old guy who, again, yeah, we're probably talking about like a 2-year window where you really want to win a title. And I don't think you'd just be screwed if you don't, because you could turn that Durant cap slot into something else. But I think it has to be a somewhat reasonable price.
So when thinking about this conversation, part of me comes back to the player movement and what we've seen over the past decade and a half in this league and how players are essentially orchestrating moves to different teams or kind of recruiting on their own. And we've seen this push from Anthony Edwards the past couple of years to try and get Kevin Durant and how much he idolizes Kevin Durant and wanting to play with him. We saw that friendship and that partnership kind of blossom at the Olympics last summer. How much of this, and I don't want to say it's all of it, but how much of this is looking to keep Anthony Edwards, your face of the franchise, your star? How much of this is looking to keep him happy, bringing in a guy he really wants to play with? How much do you think that factors into this discussion, Tony?
Yeah, that's a very good point because I mean we're watching the Pacers who are up 2-1 in the finals, where they're kind of taking the team building strategy of building through the draft, through trades, and they want to lean on their depth and homegrown players. And we're seeing the NBA kind of go away from the super teams and just trying
Yeah.
to get as many good players as possible. And that's kind of, I guess, to an extent, what this Durant deal would be. But I don't think it would be like the early 2010s when the Heat were just trying to get at all of LeBron's friends and all of the as many Hall of Famers as possible. But I do think to an extent it would be very valuable to keep Anthony Edwards happy because we do see star players still in this second apron era want to get out of town. And we just saw, I don't know, top of my head, I'm thinking of Bradley Beal, but he's nowhere near Anthony Edwards. But a lot of times players, they just want to go to a bigger market. And this move would, I think, keep Anthony Edwards happy to an extent. I don't know if he's unhappy right now, so I don't really know, I guess, where that lands. But I think anything you can do to keep a generational superstar like Edwards happy in a market like Minnesota, you kind of have to do.
Well,
Yeah, Anthony Edwards strikes me as the type of guy who really likes it here in Minnesota, and I think likes the challenge of building this thing. And it has, I mean, it's been built up over the last few years of his career, and I don't think he's the kind of guy who's going to be looking to jump to a big market or something. With that said, I think it'll be important to him to contend and to win and to be playing high level basketball now that he's gotten a taste of these two Western Conference Finals over the last 2 years. I think trading for Kevin Durant would excite Anthony Edwards in the short term for sure. But what will matter most is building this thing the right way and being able to kind of field a sustainable contender. Because if you trade for Kevin Durant and Anthony Edwards loves it, but you give up a bunch of young pieces, draft picks, young players, and then maybe those guys go on to blossom elsewhere, and then Kevin Durant is done in 2 years or whatever it might be. And then Ant's looking around like, okay, now what do we do? Like that could backfire too. That could end up leading to him wanting to leave if the Wolves take a step back competitively. So that's something that you kind of have to weigh. I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is. I don't know if the Wolves should trade for Kevin Durant. I don't know what the cost they should be willing to part with is. But what I do know is I have quite a bit of faith in Tim Connolly, who's the one making those decisions, who's proven in his time here that he's kind of deserving of our trust. And the Rudy Gobert trade worked out well. The Cat trade, you can make kind of all kinds of takes after a year. I think it looks like a win-win. Both those teams went to the conference finals, and long term, the flexibility financially that gave the Wolves, which was a big part of it, I think really, really matters. Like if they had Cat on this team right now, I don't know if trading for Kevin Durant is a possibility, unless, I mean, obviously you could actually trade Cat to the Suns, which the Knicks might do. So I guess maybe not. But yeah, I think Tim Connolly has proven that, he's the right guy to steer the ship and make the right decisions. And if he's going to trade for Kevin Durant, it's going to be because he believes in the short term and the long term outlook of it.
Yeah, and it's not like the Wolves are the only team in these Kevin Durant sweepstakes this summer. I mean, it's been heavily reported. There's a lot of teams that could be in this, and Joe wrote this over on Timberwolves on SI, looking at who has the best offer for Durant between the Spurs, Wolves, Knicks, Rockets, Raptors, or Heat. So I don't know. However you want to rank it, I'm going to ask you guys to rank where you think the Wolves sit in the Kevin Durant sweepstakes. Do you think they have the best shot of getting him? Do you think they have the worst? Where do you see them in this race to get Kevin Durant? Tony, I'll start with you, then Will.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an insider. This is solely off hunches and stuff that I'm reading, but I would put him number 2 behind the Spurs. I just kind of feel like he wants to go to the Spurs. Durant has done enough that shows he's just a guy who just loves basketball, and I think he would love the idea of playing with Wembanyama really just as much as he would with Edwards. I don't think the Rockets have that one, I guess, great number 2 that he would want to play with, or number 1 even. They just have a lot of guys who might be number 2s. So I just solely off vibes, I think the Wolves might be a more interesting option to him than the Rockets, but I think the Spurs are their top competition, because I could see, for the same reason the Wolves want to open this year or 2 year long window, I think the Spurs might want to do that. Well, Wembanyama's still on a semi-affordable contract with all the young pieces they have, so they have a lot to offer, just as much as the Wolves. They probably have more to offer, so that'll be an interesting one to monitor. And then the Rockets too; they have a lot of young pieces, so I think it's really a 3-team race. He could go to the Knicks too, obviously, but I don't know. I just don't really see that happening. It's solely off vibes, I guess. I'm not talking any league sources, but that's my view, I guess, on the scenario.
Will?
Yeah, I think, I mean, this just the Vegas odds that are kind of interesting to track on these things, which are speculative, of course. But Vegas has a lot of money invested in these things, and they tend to be fairly accurate a lot of the time. They've got the Spurs and Rockets as kind of the clear favorites. And I think that makes sense from an asset standpoint. Like Tony mentioned, the Spurs. I mean, I don't know if they want to give up the number 2 overall pick, which is probably Dylan Harper, or last year's Rookie of the Year, Stephon Castle. But you've got Devin Vassell and Jeremy Sohan, and you could use like the Harrison Barnes contract to actually make it work. They've got young assets. I think Kevin Durant would be interested in going there. The Rockets one is also interesting because they have plenty of young assets as well, and they don't have that Wemby or Ant level player, but maybe that would be appealing to KD perhaps, if he's concerned about legacy or any of those things, which I don't know that he is at this point in his career, but that's obviously been a big talking point in his career with a certain decision he made back in 2016. So yeah, if he goes to the Rockets, he could kind of be that guy, that number one, that scorer that, watching them play the Warriors in these playoffs, you feel like they really need. Like that team is fun, young, Sengun and Amen Thompson and Tari Eason. A lot of the pieces that they have are really interesting, but they don't have that kind of number one scorer. So KD, the fit there would make a lot of sense. But I don't know, would he think that team is good enough to win the West? And depending on what they'd have to give up, I don't know. But so I think there's an element of it where if it's just purely based on offers, the Wolves, I think, deserve to not be considered the favorites behind those two teams. Although, I mean, they do have some interesting things that they can put together. None of those teams have like a Rudy Gobert that they can offer to the Suns if the Suns are thinking about the short term. But also, could there be an element of KD saying, hey, I want to go to Minnesota? Like, he has a no trade clause that he's going to have to waive to make something happen. So I feel like he has some sort of leverage, and that's why there's all this talk about like him and his business partner are trying to pick out the right destination or whatever. Like he, as a superstar in this age, might have some say in where he ends up. And if he wants to play with Ant and wants to be in Minnesota, that could help. So yeah, it's just going to be really interesting to see. I wouldn't consider the Wolves one of the two favorites. I don't think it's likely that it happens, but it is very much possible given their interest that we know they showed based on reports at the trade deadline in February. It is very much possible that Tim Connolly will make something happen here, and I think it'd be fascinating if he did.
So, final question for you guys on this topic. Say the Wolves do pull off this trade. I don't know what the trade package is. Doesn't matter. Say they get Kevin Durant on this team. Does that make them more of a contender than they were the past couple of years? Final question for you guys. Tony, I'll start with you, then Will.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a hard question at this point because I think there are so many other moves that they have to make. If it is Julius Randle and it's Durant next to Gobert, I think that would be really interesting. But then if it is Gobert, I think there's a lot of defensive questions. So I think the package would matter a ton. I think if they make any other moves, it would matter a ton. But I like the short term potential. So for the sake of this argument, I would say yes, it does make them more of a contender. I think we saw against the Thunder when Edwards is not playing like a 10 out of 10 superstar, if he's maybe like an 8 or 9 out of 10, the Wolves were kind of missing that second offensive like juggernaut, and Randall struggled in the conference finals. And Durant's a guy like that he's just shown time after time that he can show up in those moments and give you a bucket whenever you need one. And I think in the short term, that's exactly what this Wolves team needs next to Edwards as he takes the next step to become one of those guys. So yeah, in the short term, I think it would make him better.
Yeah, I agree. I think they are more of a threat to win the NBA championship in 2026 if they have Kevin Durant than if they don't. Like you said, we don't know exactly what that package will be. It would be really fascinating to see if it would be centered around Randall or around Gobert because, like we've said, the fit is a lot cleaner if Randall's going out, just from a spacing and position aspect. But if it's Gobert, can you start Randall and Durant and Jaden McDaniels and are you playing Ant at the one? There would be a lot of questions to answer there. But regardless of who it is, assuming that it is a reasonable package and you're not sending the house. You're obviously keeping Jaden McDaniels. I think the Wolves will be more of a contender next year with Kevin Durant on their roster. What does that mean? Would it be good enough to win a title? I don't know. Would it be? What would it mean for 2027 and beyond? Like, would they sign Durant to an extension? Would he just play on the final year of his contract here? I don't know. A lot of questions, but again, I mean, like I said at the top, I will fully talk myself into it and buy into it if the Wolves trade for KD, and if they don't, I will talk myself into them having dodged a bullet and made a great, sound, long-term decision.
It'll certainly be a fascinating story and saga to track throughout the summer, and I assume as soon as the NBA Finals come to an end, we'll start hearing this even more so than we have over the past couple days. And looking forward to reading all of your work over on Timberwolves on SI. Go read the rest of their work over on Vikings, Twins, and Gophers on SI as well, covering it all for you there. Hit subscribe to the YouTube channel. It does help us get found. Also notifies you every time we post a new video here to the channel. We'll talk to you tomorrow with another topic across Minnesota Sports. Talk to you then.